Hi to you all, fellow parishioners, and thanks to Mario for the opportunity of connecting with you in this way during these times of COVID. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Trish Carroll, and I've been a parishioner of Kedron for many, many years. I also work as a counsellor in private practice, so I have the privilege of supporting people, providing support to people with many circumstances of loss, grief, trauma, life transitions, anxiety, etc. And more recently, COVID, circumstances of COVID. So today is an opportunity to share some ideas and resources. I've got some handouts that I've given to Mario to share with you to reinforce the importance of our connectedness with others and really importantly, connectedness with ourselves, which is something we often forget. Well, now, current context, COVID has in recent months and weeks changed life as we've known it and affected us so differently and variably. There's been the loss of jobs for many, many people, loss of employment, loss of income, loss of livelihood, loss of sense of security. There's been the loss of health, loss of life, loss of loved ones, and the inability to grieve and pay tribute to our loved ones at funerals that we would have chosen to organise pre the COVID restrictions. That's been a source of much distress for many people. People have had loss of opportunity to celebrate weddings, birthdays, and significant occasions with loved ones. The loneliness, the isolation of the self-isolation, the quarantine has taken its toll on many people. The loss of opportunity to gather for Mass, although we have the opportunity of watching Mario and those who assist, it's just not the same. The loss of opportunity to connect and touch and hug people, friends, family, has an impact on our whole well-being. And of course, there's the vicarious loss, the sense of vicarious loss, the loss that we feel for mankind, really, as we see the pain globally, locally in Australia, and more locally, and for our loved ones who are affected. A sense of fear, anxiety, helplessness, grief, loss, all very valid, very pervasive feelings for many through this time. So it's really important. One of the things that happens to us when we have these lack of connections and increased heightened emotions is that we lose track of our connection with self. And today, I just thought I'd reflect with you on how we can maintain and improve that connection with self to maintain and improve our well-being and mental health. And the first, 3 or 4 overarching categories, and the first really is self-care. So important. But of course, self-care isn't just about physical care. Well-being is about social, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, professional, physical self. So, and throw in a bit of play and fun, our joyful self. It's really, really important to be able to maintain that sense of self-care where possible during these times. And as we're hearing from all the government bodies and anyone who's talking about what matters at the moment, it's about our exercise and our diet and our sleep and routine, having a sense of routine and predictability if possible, but also a bit of variability where it's required. All of these sound often easier said than done. I know, I myself need to get better at the exercise, etc. But it's really, really important because they feed all of these things, the routine, the exercise, the diet, the sleep, I'll say it again, affect the way our brain works. They're brain food for us. They affect the way we feel about ourselves. You know, you've heard about endorphins, that exercise creates endorphins. It affects the neurotransmitters in the brain, which impacts on how we think. And how we think about a circumstance is really important because that affects the way we feel. So it's very much all interdependent. And I would encourage you to look at the resources I've sent through to have a little review of your own self-care and think about what can you actually do now and what can you plan and look forward to, because that's a really important thing, having something to look forward to down the track. I've also included a resource on unhelpful thinking habits. Very, very, very important. We all have them, and they are exacerbated at times of stress, such as now. So we all, sometimes engage in a bit of catastrophizing. We might predict what might be happening. We might engage in a bit of mind reading. All of these can be really unhelpful when we're communicating with other people, but also how we think about life and events can affect our own mental health and well-being, how we interpret what's going on around us, how we interpret an offer of help, how we interpret an expression of grief. Knowing that we all experience grief differently. If that's the one thing you remember from today, I'd like you to think about that. For those of you who are living with family, who are not living with family but in communication with family, we all experience grief differently. There's no one right or wrong way. So please, remember that and cut yourself some slack and others if possible. I've got a few other ideas here, and one is to know yourself, is to know what works for you, to know what doesn't work for you, know what irritates you, know what your triggers are, and manage that if possible. And to manage the fear, to limit the media, please limit the media input, because that can really escalate fear and anxiety. I say to clients, suggest to clients, no more than twice a day, morning and night. It's enough to watch the news and the bad, because it's all bad news. So feel up to date, but please limit the media if you can. And another thing, I guess, apart from connecting with family and selecting a time to sit in a sunny place and be intentional about different spaces in your house and discover different spaces in your house. Another maybe helpful tip for some of you is to write down what's happening for you, to journal. In between your brain training and your other activities, to journal and capture the wisdom. I've noticed on Facebook there are some parishioners on Facebook who post interesting quotes, and thank you to those people who I see posting lovely quotes, because it's the wisdom that gives hope. And I think someone said once, where we can still tell a story, we still have hope. So it's great to be able to hear people's stories and know that there's wisdom from people who have been through adversity before. And that's another tip, to think about those of you who are experiencing grief, to think about what's worked for you before, what's met your needs before, and how can you maybe accept the help that might meet those needs now. Accepting help is really very, very important. So self-care, challenging unhelpful thinking habits, and there's a handout for that. Accepting help, it's really, really very important. I've got another few little tips here that I've... And really importantly, focusing on your strengths, inquiring with yourself and with each other as a family, to have said out loud, what are your strengths? I've included in the resources a survey, a link to a survey that you can do called the VIA Character Strengths Survey. Take it for free, take the free survey. And it will be interesting for you to reflect on your strengths and discuss them with family. It's a way to articulate what we do well, and for other people to articulate what we do well. It's something that we don't do enough of, I suggest. So that's a resource for you to think about that, and think about our own resilience. Reflect on your resilience. Resilience is about adapting. It's not necessarily pushing through at all cost and abdicating your needs and not seeking support. Resilience includes the notion of support and seeking support. So please reflect on that and identify your degree of resilience and grit. And if you're not feeling very resilient, please accept help. There are all sorts of ways that you can accept or access help at the moment, and I'll mention that shortly. So there are some ideas for staying true to self and accessing support and knowing yourself and connecting with yourself at the moment. It's really important, I guess, too, in connecting with others, to know the power, just before we leave self, those of you who have been offering kindness to others. Kindness actually releases a neurochemical called oxytocin. So those of you who have been kind to yourself, it's really important, and those of you who are being kind to others, it's really important to know that the brain releases oxytocin, and oxytocin, I'm reading this out, leads to increased self-esteem and confidence, increased energy, increased levels of happiness, and increased levels of positivity. So those of you who are kind to yourself and kind to others, that's another way of connecting. And of course, that's taking us to connecting with other people. Now, Kedron Parish has the care and concern and access to Mario and various information in the newsletter about how you can access help and give help during this time. A quote, one of my favourite quotes by an Italian author, Italo Calvino, says, "In the city of sadness, there runs an invisible thread that binds one living being to another for a moment." So I guess what I've noticed at this time is that thread, COVID has made that thread a lot more visible. It's a very visible thread. We can see tangibly how people are connecting with one another. I guess we can always make that thread more and more visible and stronger. You know, where are the frayed edges? How can we make it stronger? And that is through connecting with other people, through our kindness, through recognizing that we all experience grief differently. There's no one right or wrong way. Through our connections with Mass and connecting in and the live streaming of Mass for those of you who choose to do that. There are so many ways of connecting with one another. So I invite you to continue to do that, to continue to offer and receive kindness, and to also have a little look at the resource that I've sent so that you can see some of the other places to connect if in need. There are a whole lot of phone lines and helplines that I've included in the resource for different age groups. So I guess that really leaves us just towards the end. I've also included, to finish off, for you to share with one another, a loving kindness meditation, because of course being mindful and meditative is another strategy which I've not mentioned because that's a whole session in itself really. But those of you who enjoy meditation, and even those of you who don't, I'd encourage you to read this resource, and which invites you to feel all the care and love around you and to offer it to others. So in conclusion, thanks for listening. I hope it didn't go on too long, and I hope you enjoy the resources, and feel free to give me a call or send me an email if you would like to ask any questions. I've included my details on the resource. Thank you. Look after yourselves, please. Stay well. And I look forward to seeing you when all of this is behind us. Take care. Bye.